we are presenting on fallacies. What is a fallacy? A fallacy is a mistaken belief, especially one based on unsound argument. There are different types of fallacy, but today we are only going to focus on two different types of fallacies: hasty generalization and oversimplification. What is hasty generalization? Hasty generalization is drawing a conclusion based on a small sample size rather than looking at statistics that are much more in line with the typical or average situation. So basically what that is trying to say is that hasty generalization focuses more on the smaller quantity than larger quantities. For example, my father smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day since age 14 and lived until age 69. Therefore, smoking really can't be that bad for you. The explanation for that is that it is extremely unreasonable and dangerous to draw a universal conclusion about the health risks of smoking by the case study of one man. Now we are moving on to oversimplification. Oversimplification is basically making assumptions about an entire group of people or a range of cases based on an inadequately small sample or making assumption without sufficient evidence. So what that is saying is that we assume things but we don't have enough evidence. For example, my father drank 3 bottles of rum a day since age 14 and lived until age 69. Therefore, drinking really can't be that bad for you. By nature, human beings are curious creatures. We're always looking for the causes of things. However, if we are not careful, we may mistakenly attribute the causes of events to things that really weren't factors. So what that is trying to say is that we don't have facts of that. We are just assuming that 3 bottles of rum a day is bad, which isn't really bad, but we as humans assume things our own way, and that is what makes things fallacious. Examples of fallacious statements. Catherine loved Tom Cruise. One day, she meets Tom Cruise and he tells her unicorns lives in New York City. Without searching to find out if fairy tales have sprung to life in the Midtown Manhattan, she believes it to be true. Another example. Princess Kate wears Alexander McQueen. Are you trying to say you have a better fashion sense than a royal princess? And there we have 2 other examples, but we don't have to go in details with them. These are fallacious statements that we made by ourselves. These are original fallacious statements. People have been praying to God for years. No one can prove he doesn't exist. Therefore, he exists. Example number 2. Since the students have no questions concerning the topics discussed in class, the students are ready for a test. People often say, how can we serve a God we don't see? But how can we feel a toothache we don't see? Therefore, there is a God just like the pain of a toothache is there. So what that is trying to say is that not because we don't see it or because we do, like for example, the second example says, since the students have no questions concerning the topics discussed in class, the students are ready for a test. That is simply saying that we are assuming that they are ready for a test because they don't have any questions. And that is the type of fallacy that is oversimplification. Why is fallacies important? Well, studying fallacies is an important part of logical and one that can immediately enrich your life. It will help you develop the vocabulary and skills needed to better evaluate the arguments of politicians, neighbors, advertisers, authorities, and people who loved you before you began studying logic. So what that is trying to say is that fallacies are basically arguments, and it is important because it assists you in knowing how to deal with arguments or people when you are arguing. And here we have a worksheet that you can look at and see if you have learned the difference between hasty generalization and oversimplification. For example, we will do number 1 for you. 3 out of 4 school teachers prefer bright markers, but I only asked 4 teachers total. So we know that is an example of hasty generalization, because remember we say that hasty generalization deals with, so we say that hasty generalization is like dealing more with small quantities. So in this survey, the teacher asked 3 out of the 4 teachers prefer bright markers, but the person who conducts the survey only conduct a survey with 4 teachers in total, so that's a small quantity, and 3 out of the 4 prefer bright markers. They didn't went and do a large quantity of people to see who prefers, so that's a hasty generalization when dealing with small quantities. And we are going to do a next example, which is number 4. That's an example of oversimplification. Maria joined the music group just to be around. That is an oversimplification. Hence the reason we told you that oversimplification is like assuming things without sufficient evidence. How do we know that Maria joined the music group just to be around boys? We're assuming that we don't have evidence or facts that Maria only joined the group because she wants to be around boys. So number 2, number 3, and number 5 is for you, and you can see if you have learned anything between you have learned how to differentiate between generalization and oversimplification. Thank you for your undivided attention.